Hi, my name is Bruce Farrington, and for the past year I have been documenting the history of the town of Sodus, including the village of Sodus. Like many historians, I would love to go back in time and experience the rich history that I write about. In this presentation, through the use of the computer, I will travel back in time to around the beginning of the 20th century and walk the streets of Sodus. 5 years ago, I did a similar trip through time to Sodus Point. I learned a couple of lessons, which I will use for this trip. First, a nice Amish family lent me some clothes, so I will look the part. Secondly, my brother-in-law, who is a coin dealer, supplied me dollar bills and coins of this time frame, so I'm not using novelty money this time around. I should be good to go, so let's see what Sodus looked like in bygone days. So here I am on Mill Street in Sodus, looking south. Let's begin our journey. Wow, everything looks so black and white. There is the typical 1 horsepower vehicle. It's a good thing I was raised on a horse farm. It's second nature for me to watch where I step. I hear something down the street, so let's head south and see what it is. Hey, it's the old box factory, located on the southwest side of Mill Street at the bottom of the hill. Mill Street got its name because of several mills that were located there. Originally, this mill was built in the 1850s and was George Sager's sawmill and also his grist mill. He was succeeded by Harvey Weaver, who was then followed by his son George. Later, Chet Conant occupied these buildings as a box factory. These wooden boxes were mostly used to pack and ship produce grown in the area. I hear another mill in the distance. Let's head north back on Mill Street, this time on the east side of the street. The Champion Roller Mills, located just north of the cemetery on Mill Street, was owned and operated by Ben Hopkins and his sons. Roller mills are different from grist mills. Roller mills use cylindrical rollers to crush or grind grain to make flour, whereas grist mills use two millstones to grind the grain. Just in front of the roller mill was a coop that was the home of hundreds of doves. Ben Hopkins had sailed the Great Lake as a captain of a vessel. Ben was known as a two-fisted old salt who you did not want to get in a fight with. Continuing north on the east side of Mill Street, we now come to the Mill Street Fire Hall as it appeared in 1917. It also housed the courtroom, the jail, and the village office. It will be replaced in the 1970s by the present Sodus Municipal Building. Let's go north up Mill Street. I am hearing some really strange music just up the street. Well, there's something you don't see anymore. The gypsies have set up a camp in downtown Sodus. Let's go inside the tent and see what's happening.
You, kind sir, you appear to have journeyed a great distance to be here. For one thin dime, let Queen Esmeralda look at your palm and tell your past, present, and future. Queen Esmeralda knows all, sees all.
You have no idea how far I've come to see you. Here's a dime. Knock yourself out.
No, no, there's no violence in a palm reading. It is a spiritual experience. Let me see your hand. Ah, oh, Your timelines on your palm are all jumbled together. Your past is in the future, and your present is in the past. I've never witnessed a palm such as this. It is no use. The only thing Queen Esmeralda can tell you is that you will meet a handsome stranger very soon.
Well, I guess being a time traveler messes up having your future foretold. I don't need a crystal ball to tell her future, though. This will be the last time a gypsy caravan comes to Sodus. In just a few years, the traditional gypsy way of life of traveling from one town to another in a wagon will come to an end in the United States. I wonder what she meant about meeting a handsome stranger. There's a crowd of people gathering on the corner of Main Street and Maple Ave. I wonder what is going on over there. Oh my! It's Prince Nelson walking a tightrope over Maple Ave as part of the Booster Day celebrations. Booster Days were created in the early 1900s by the merchants to bring in people to be entertained and then hopefully shop in their stores. Prince Nelson was a local boy from Joy who made good. His name was Nelson Stevens, and he appears to have been born with this acrobatic ability. When very small, he would do such stunts as walking his mother's clothesline, standing on his head on it, and climbing to the roof and doing a headstand on the chimney. In the early 1900s, he became internationally known as Prince Nelson, the daredevil tightrope walker. He would go on to walk across the Niagara Gorge and even participated in the 1915 festival for the opening of the Brooklyn Bridge. Gee, the lady next to me looks a little shaky on her feet. Are you okay, ma'am?
Oh my! Prince Nelson is so dashing and brave. I fear that I shall swoon.
So that's what the gypsy lady meant. Steady on. If I may be so bold, let me offer you my arm. It won't do having you swoon on the street.
Oh, thank you. You are most kind. He is just so debonair, don't you think?
Yes, he is a rock star, all right.
Pardon me? Rock star? Did you say rock star? What is a rock star?
You'll have to wait and ask your grandchildren when the Beatles come on the Ed Sullivan Show. I walk away from a very confused lady and head north on Maple Ave. Note to self, I better be careful using 21st century slang. I've entered the old opera house where the cast is preparing to perform the biblical play Queen Esther before a packed house. Did you know that Sodus had 2 opera houses? This is the original one that was erected by George Taylor and Albert Thorne. It was known as the Sodus Opera House, but just as often it was called the Taylor and Thorne Opera House. It is located in the building that will become the Sodus Reformed Church, located across the street from the library. Opening night was on September 10th, 1878. Many plays and musical performances would play here until 1906. In that year, plays began to be performed at the new Opera House on Main Street that could accommodate much larger audiences. I noticed on the way in that the bottom level of the Opera House was open air and had hitching posts for horses during performances. In April of 1912, the Dutch Reformed Church moved into the building and will eventually become the church that we know in the 21st century. I'd love to stay and watch the play, but I have a number of more stops to make. I exit the Opera House, head south on Maple Ave until I get back to Main Street, and start to head east on the north side of the street. As I walk down the street, I hear a noise that invokes both fear and dread in the early 1900s. Sure enough, a horse-drawn fire engine rushes by. Oh no! Several buildings have burned to the ground on the northeast side of Main Street. The hand-pumped fire engines of this era are just not up to the task of controlling a fire, and all too often the fires have to burn themselves out after destroying several buildings, as is the case here. In 1912, another fire will destroy several more buildings, this time on West Main Street. 1906 will be long remembered as a bad year for Sodus for several reasons, this being one of them. The local international harvester dealer has brought together a bunch of his newfangled one-cylinder kerosene-powered Mogul tractors in front of the Butts and Danford hardware store, located where the Sunrad store is now. The idea is to promote them and maybe sell some more of them to the local farmers. Less than 9,000 of these type of tractors were produced from the Chicago factory. I continue to head east on the north side of Main Street and hear what sounds like a factory. The basket factory was originally the Presbyterian Church building, which was moved in the 1860s to the current site of the RG&E building on State Street. Over the years, the business was owned by the Granger, Fish, and Hewlett families. The baskets that were produced were used by area farmers for produce. I am now crossing over to the south side of Main Street and heading back downtown. In 1900, Dr. John F. Myers opened a hospital on the southwest corner of Main and Gaylord Streets. From 1924, Dr. F. Linwood Myers was associated with his father until the latter's death in 1942. Following the elder Myers' death, Dr. Linwood, as he was affectionately known throughout the community, operated the hospital until, in 1955, it was sold to a nonprofit membership corporation, Myers Community Hospital Foundation Incorporation, funds having been raised for this purpose by public subscription. The building was razed in 1965 following the completion of a new facility on Middle Road. Hey, look, they're finally paving Main Street in front of Myers Hospital. Notice they are using cement for the pavement and not asphalt as we do today. The main reason why the roads were being paved is the increasing use of automobiles, which require a smoother surface due to their faster speeds than the horse and buggy. In 1917, the Sodus Record reports that 1 in 16 families now owns an automobile, and increasing rapidly. Just think, 2017 is the 100th anniversary of paved streets in Sodus. That means in 2 more years, it will be the centennial of the first potholes. Something is happening across the street on the corner of Main Street and Maple Ave. It doesn't sound good. Let's see what's going on. Uh-oh, the trolley has brought the 3 accused murderers of Edward Pullman for a hearing before Peace Justice Herman Kelly at the old Sodus Opera House. Edward Pullman was a well-liked constable and night watchman. He was killed on March 23, 1906, while making his rounds at the Knapp's Bank, where the hardware store is presently located in Sodus. The 3 accused murderers are Ed Kelly, Frederick Schultz, and James McCormick of the infamous Kelly Gang. All 3 will be found guilty and sentenced to long prison terms. Ed Kelly will escape from prison within a few years and will never be caught. Today, however, they'd better be careful. I have never before witnessed a lynching mob, and these people want their blood. This is another reason 1906 was a bad year for Sodus. Here are the 3 accused murderers from left to right: Fred Schultz, James McCormick, and Big Ed Kelly. Continuing westbound on Main Street, on the south side, opposite Maple Ave, we come to the Snyder Hotel with its iconic bandstand in front. The Snyder Hotel, more commonly known as the Snyder House, was a famous inn in this section of the state for many years. It was used as a stagecoach stop on the Rochester to Oswego route. The lower floors were built in the early 1800s, and a 3rd floor was added by Lorenzo Whitney, who acquired the inn in 1866 and owned and operated it for many years. When the town of Sodus went dry in 1878, Whitney was very wroth, and he built a tight board fence 7 feet high around this square. Within the enclosure was a pump which belonged to Whitney, but it was called the town pump. He swore that if people of Sodus would not let him sell whiskey, he would not let them drink water from that well, and for several months the whole business district patronized John Willie's force pump, situated between his dwelling and store at the edge of the business district. Near midnight one evening, late in the fall, 2 of the village cut-ups were in conversation on the steps of A.B. Williams' store. They contemplated Whitney's unsightly fence, and one of them said, "That damn fence has been there long enough. Let's set it afire." That was the end of the spite fence. In 1884, Lorenzo Whitney leased the building to E.N. Snyder and sold it to him in 1894. From this angle you can see both the bandstand and the fountain. The fountain has an interesting history. In 1917, the Sodus Women's Christian Temperance Union, the WCTU, raised funds to construct this fountain in front of the Snyder House on Main Street in the village of Sodus. It served as a simple drinking source for people, horses, and dogs. Some say it was to promote the drinking of good old water over the evils of alcohol. In 1928, the fountain was moved to the village park, now the site of the Sodus Central School, where it stayed until renovations of the school necessitated its move. Having no permanent home, the fountain was moved behind the village highway barn, where it was stored for several years. The Sodus Rural Cemetery Association offered it a new location at the south end of the cemetery, where it was moved in June of 2006, its final resting place. A poem was written in later years after its construction and reads as follows. They called themselves the WCTU. Bunch of busybodies. What did they do? Put up a fountain in front of the inn. Said, drink the water, not the gin. Never did hear them women too well. Even now they don't ring my bell. We use that fountain for horses and dogs, while sitting at the bar drinking mugs of grog. Later the Snyder House would become the Sodus Hotel and then the 1812 Hotel. Just to the west of the bandstand, we see early automobiles on the corner of Main and Mill Streets. Three popular modes of transportation are represented: automobiles, bicycles, and Wilson de Brine's horse-drawn accommodation omnibus. The omnibus ran between the train station on Belden Ave and the Snyder Hotel. The early 1900s were an important transition period for transportation. The change from horse-drawn carriage to the much faster automobile would fundamentally change American life and culture. As a historian and a futurist, I believe we are on the verge of a similar transition period in our time, with the advent of the driverless car and Elon Musk Hyperloop. Continuing our journey westward on West Main Street, we find the Town Highway Department posing for a picture. Notice the trolley track running right down the center of the street. The Highway Department is using a combination of horse and motorized vehicles. The Sodus Town Highway Department maintained roadways throughout the township. This 1910 view of the workmen included, left to right, Leonard Newell, Ed Catu, Dick Myers, George Fishaw, Bill Hewson, Whitney Tour, Abe Clear, and Bert Rawdon. Seated in the buggy at right is Highway Superintendent George Rawdon. Wow, what's going on now? There is a massive crowd gathering on West Main Street about where the Chinese restaurant is now located. It looks like everyone in Sodus must be there. Let's see what all the excitement is about. Do you believe it? Former President Teddy Roosevelt has just stepped out of the new Sodus Opera House, where he gave a rousing speech to a packed house of 1,200 people in support of Senator Davenport, who is the progressive candidate for governor. Unfortunately, Senator Davenport will not be elected, and in the 1914 election, Teddy's fifth cousin, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, will also lose the Democratic primary for New York State Senator to James Gerald. Man, this is too great an opportunity to miss. I have got to get a closer look at Teddy. I'll use good old 21st century pushing and shoving techniques to jostle my way to the front of the crowd. Excuse me. Pardon me. Coming through, lady with a baby. Oh my gosh, there he is right in front of me. I yell, "Bully for you, Mr. President!" and he turns and waves to me. Teddy Roosevelt just waved to me. Without thinking, I grab my iPhone from my pocket and snap a picture. Did it come out? Yes! Boy, wait till I post this one on Facebook. That should get me some likes. Unfortunately, I was so caught up in the moment I didn't notice the lady next to me.
Sir, what are you doing? What is that thing?
It's a new type of mirror that keeps the image for a few seconds. It's all the craze in France right now.
I never heard of such a thing.
Oh yes, it's called the iPhone, which is French for phony image. Boy, that was too close for comfort. I have to be very careful I don't change history. Note to self, leave the iPhone home on the next trip. While I am here, I have stopped in the new Opera House on Main Street. Having opened in 1906, this new Opera House can now hold up to 900 people comfortably between the main floor and balcony seating. I noticed on the new Opera House banner outside, above where Teddy Roosevelt was speaking, that they are currently performing the play Peg of My Heart. It sounds like they are practicing backstage. Let's go have a listen. The new Opera House will have a good run, and over the years many plays will be performed here. Later it will morph into the Sodus Theater, which is the fate that many of the opera houses had. Continuing westward on West Main Street, I spot C. Ray Tinklepaw making his rounds. Ray was the first rural carrier out of the Sodus post office and began his duties November 1st, 1900, when Prine Riggs was the postmaster. He retired 33 years later. Not content to quit work entirely, he established a coal agency and also acted as sexton at St. John's Episcopal Church. Speaking of St. John's, here we are at this beautiful church on West Main Street. Did you know St. John's is the oldest building in Sodus, New York that is still used for its original purpose? This church dates all the way back to 1826. A good transportation system was vital to the growth of any community in the early 1900s. 1900 marked the introduction of the Rochester and Sodus Bay Railway Company through Sodus. The route of the trolley followed the Ridge Road eastward from Rochester to Wallington, then northeast to Sodus Point. It provided a convenient and economical means of transportation along its route and also delivered freight and mail. It would continue until 1929, when it no longer could compete with the new bus services. Here we have Mike Keyes entering Sodus from the west on Main Street. I wave to him and yell, "How you doing, Mike?" as he goes by. He puts his head out and yells, "Do I know you?" I yell back, "I doubt it, since I won't be born for another 40 years. There's that confused look again that I've been seeing on my walk. I have now traveled all the way on West Main Street to where the Dynelec Corporation is located in our time. The brick high school here was built in 1902 and replaced the old Sodus Academy. The academy charged tuition, and now the new high school was free to attend. In 1925, this building will be partially raised and greatly enlarged. It will have the top floor removed and be basically the same building we see in our time. That newer high school will be here until 1950, when the current high school will be built at its present location on Mill Street. I am now walking north on Belden Ave. I thought it would be nice to end my walk at the old train depot. As I approach it, a steam locomotive is passing through westbound. Looking down the tracks towards the west, I see another locomotive heading east towards me. Gee, it's going pretty fast. Wait a minute! It's on the same track as the other train! Oh no! I run down the tracks to see if I can help. The head-on collision results in demolishing 3 locomotives, 3 boxcars, and injuring 3 men. It's a miracle no one was killed. One engineer jumped from the train seconds before the collision and slightly injured his knee. Another was bruised and somewhat scalded. The third engineer was also bruised and suffered a broken arm. The accident was found to be caused by the failure of a young man named Milton in the Wallington station to deliver an order to the westbound train to meet the eastbound freight at Sodus. The story is that the young man had been working much longer hours than he should have. All in all, it could have been much worse. Here again, 1906 was a bad year for Sodus. Well, I'm back at the train depot. My heart is still beating a mile a minute. The Rome, Watertown, and Ogdenburg Railroad station opened in 1872 when the railroad was built. It served as both a passenger and freight depot. Notice the old horse-drawn omnibus waiting to pick up passengers at the depot. I think I'll pass getting on board the waiting train. As a matter of fact, I think I've had enough excitement in the past, and it's time to return to my own time. It's good to be back where everything is in color. It's nice to see that the old train depot building is being used and being maintained. Let's see, I left my car over on Mill Street. I wish I had the omnibus to take me over there.